laboratory and on practical poultry farms were required to develop sulfaquinoxylin, commonly known as SQ, to the point where it could be produced economically so that poultrymen could use simple, practical, low-cost methods for the prevention and control of outbreaks of coccidiosis. Here is a practical demonstration of the effectiveness of this drug in preventing an outbreak of coccidiosis. 2 units of 100 birds each were given identical feed and care, except that the protected birds received a preventive level of sulfaquinoxylin pre-mixed with its feed. Note that on this 4th day after inoculation with coccidiosis, the unprotected birds show little change in appetite. On the 5th day, however, the multiplication of parasites in the cells causes bleeding to start. Note the bloody droppings in the unprotected group. Some birds have begun to droop and show the typical ruffling of the feathers. Some combs are beginning to turn pale. And here is the first dead bird, and another, and another. While the birds on sulfaquinoxylin are active, with appetites as keen as ever, there are 1 or 2 birds that appear listless. Bleeding continues through the 6th day. It's on the 5th and 6th days when most of the deaths occur. Some of the droopy birds will be stunted. The birds that survive the attack will develop an immunity, as proven when tests are made with large doses of oocysts at a later date. And here's the score at the end of the tests, based on conservative estimates. Cost for feed and care were identical for both flocks. The only added cost was $1.12 for sulfaquinoxylin preventive medication, which is sufficient SQ to raise 100 birds to full market weight. And here's what resulted from that $1.12 investment. Death score? Only 1% dead in the SQ protected flock, as against 11% dead in the unprotected flock. In dollars and cents, this adds up to a loss of 30 cents per dead bird, which covers 15 cents for the original cost of the chick, plus another 15 cents for normal marketing profit if the bird had survived. Stunting score. Only 1% stunted in the SQ protected flock, as against 10% stunted in the unprotected flock. The additional feed cost of bringing the stunted birds up to full market weight is estimated at 6 cents per chick. Remember, this extra profit of $2.42 is for 100 birds only. In an average broiler plant raising 10,000 birds, the extra profit would be $242. Moreover, SQ protected birds weigh more on less feed and have superior market finish. Hundreds of commercial broiler flocks and millions of birds have been thus protected with no severe outbreaks of cecal or intestinal coccidiosis. Sulfaquinoxylin protected these birds by permitting a mild infection to develop, so the birds may acquire an immunity. This prevents the damaging effects of uncontrolled coccidiosis. Sulfaquinoxylin has proved to be relatively non-toxic. Experiments have shown that many times the recommended preventive level has been used without harmful effect. With such a large margin of safety, there is little danger of overdosing. It has been successfully used the year round under a wide variety of climatic conditions. The grower who waits until coccidiosis strikes loses in 2 ways. First, in deaths, and second, in stunted birds. Even if a breakthrough does occur due to overcrowding and poor sanitation, the cushioning effect of the preventive medication will keep the deaths and stunting loss to a very small percentage compared to birds not fed the preventive medication. When an outbreak of coccidiosis occurs in an unprotected flock, quick action is essential, for the disease may spread rapidly between the time of infection and the recognition of the symptoms. The first objective is to control the deaths. Little can be done for severely affected birds, but for the rest of the flock, the best results can be obtained by using sulfaquinoxolin as early as possible. But why wait until the 5th day when the infection will have had a 4-day start? SQ preventive medication works for you night and day. Many outbreaks can be satisfactorily controlled by following the 2-3-2-3-2 schedule. This consists of giving sulfaquinoxolin at the higher levels recommended for the control of outbreaks for 3 2-day periods, with no treatment during the 2 intervening periods of 3 days each. As soon as the disease is recognized, sulfaquinoxolin should be given as directed on the tag or on the label. This 2-3-2-3-2 schedule is not just a group of numbers pulled out of a hat. This program has been scientifically developed to break up the cycle of reproduction of the parasite. During these 12 days, the birds in many flocks will have developed a satisfactory immunity. A bird which has developed an immunity to one type of coccidiosis may not be safe from future attack by another type, since cecal and intestinal coccidiosis are caused by different species of coccidia. To permit adequate exposure and reduce the need for medication to a minimum, do not change the litter during an outbreak unless absolutely necessary. This infected litter is important in developing immunity. Stir the litter if it has a tendency to cake. If water is spilled from the drinking fountain, replace the wet litter. The experience of a large poultry grower with preventive medication in commercial broiler production showed no severe outbreaks of cecal or intestinal coccidiosis. His record in handling 160 flocks since 1946 is the equivalent of 53 years of successful experience with preventive medication. Sulfaquinoxolin is the product recommended for prevention as well as the control of all the major economically important types of coccidiosis. Eimeria tenella, Nicatrix, Acervulina, Maxima, Brunetti. It is also an effective agent for reducing mortality of acute fowl cholera. As effective as sulfaquinoxolin is, it cannot replace good management. Sulfaquinoxolin should act as an aid to management. If flocks are overcrowded, if the litter is allowed to get wet, if ventilation is poor, coccidiosis may break through the preventive guard of sulfaquinoxolin. In that case, the SQ is not at fault. You need a stronger guard immediately. In other words, you need a higher level of SQ as recommended in the sulfaquinoxolin control program. While sulfaquinoxolin has all but eliminated the #1 source of loss in poultry raising, it should not be considered a cure-all. There are many complicating diseases which are not controlled by sulfaquinoxolin or any other coccidiostat. And there are other poultry diseases which have symptoms similar to coccidiosis and can cause loss of appetite and a reduction of food intake. Under these conditions, the birds getting sulfaquinoxolin in their feed will not be getting the proper concentration for adequate protection from coccidiosis. In such cases, the concentration in the feed should be increased, or the sulfaquinoxolin should be administered in the drinking water, since sick birds may drink even when they refuse feed. The occasional appearance of a bloody dropping in a sulfaquinoxolin protected flock should be no cause for alarm, since this indicates that the birds are building an immunity. Because it is important to mix the proper concentrations of sulfaquinoxolin in the feed uniformly and scientifically, the distribution of the drug to poultry growers has been limited to commercial feed manufacturers and veterinary pharmaceutical manufacturers. Feed manufacturers, for example, have the equipment and the know-how developed through years of experience in blending vitamins such as riboflavin in large amounts of feed. They are able to mix minute amounts of a drug uniformly with a ton of feed through a series of progressively larger blends, and they can check the thoroughness of the final results with tests required by government regulation. The poultry grower can be sure of the proper concentrations as and when needed, either in the form of feed mixtures or as premixes, which should always be used as the manufacturer directs. For use in drinking water, sulfaquinoxolin may be obtained from your feed or remedy dealer in solutions, soluble powders, and tablets. Poultry profits originate with good stock, good feed, wise management. Management whose motto is start clean, keep clean. And these profits can be protected with sulfaquinoxolin, the product recommended for prevention as well as control of coccidiosis in both chickens and turkeys. Coccidiosis deaths have been limited to less than 2% as compared with a previous loss of 10 to 20%. Broilers weigh more on less feed than untreated birds. The flocks maintain greater uniformity and better market quality. The drug has no adverse effect on egg production, fertility, or hatchability. There has been no severe outbreak of cecal or intestinal coccidiosis in the raising of hundreds of millions of birds by some of the largest growers in the country. It is effective the year round under a wide variety of climatic conditions, and it protects the birds while they build immunity. The development of sulfaquinoxolin is an important milestone in the Merck research and production program, devoted not only to more effective disease prevention, but also to continuing improvement of the nutrition of poultry.